Dua Lipa, Ed Sheeran, Backstreet Boys, and Shawn Mendes. If you're into pop music, you'll probably recognize most, if not all, of these artists' names. Do you want to know what else they have in common? They were all named in an investigation that exposed their labels for trying to push their songs on the radio in exchange for under-the-table cash. That's shocking, considering these are big names in the industry who shouldn't really be relying on such methods to gain fame. However, this is the truth of the matter, and we're going to understand why it's so prevalent, especially in today's music climate. So let's learn how the music industry creates fake stars. Chapter 1. How are these stars created? So the first question must be quite an obvious one. Music industry is an immensely competitive and cutthroat space, and for each artist that's made it, there are thousands who are struggling to even pay their bills through their musical careers. Now, let me be very honest with you up front. If you want to become famous, then your best bet is through a record label. Yes, I know that everyone likes to paint them out to be the biggest villains of the music industry. But let's face it, there's no way an independent artist is ever going to become as big as The Weeknd or Taylor Swift. You need support from an established organization because the competition is so deadly that you'll need several other factors to go your way as well. But why are labels so revered? British producer Jake Gosling sums it up nicely in a 2012 interview with The Guardian where he said, and I quote, "They've got marketing teams, press teams, radio pluggers, back accounts departments, and when you get bigger you need help with that stuff. You need a good team around you. You can be really creative but not very good at business and marketing." For example, I don't know what Leonard Cohen's business acumen was like. Singer-songwriter Neil Young also has a positive review for record labels as an institution in the business. He said, "What I like about record companies is that they present and nurture artists. That doesn't exist on iTunes, it doesn't exist on Amazon. That's what a record company does, and that's why I like my record company." At the end of the day, record labels are a multifaceted support network for their musicians. Whether it's an indie one or a major brand, labels can provide music promotion, arrange interviews with radio stations, manage bookkeeping and finances, coordinate sales and publicity, bolster an internet presence, find producers, develop the artistic look of an album, manage contracts and other legal issues, such as any nasty lawsuits that might crop up. As an example, you could consider the case of those rumors regarding EUNG coming in to save Drake from further violation due to the Kendrick Lamar beat. It's because he's a valued artist to the company that they're willing to interfere in such a thing, because at the end of the day, they have big money invested in the artist as well. Once again, I want to make it clear that these are rumors and have not been officially proven, but I'd still like to consider the possibility that they're true. Most importantly, a record label is an investment bank for musical artists. The label invests money into an artist, their recordings, style, video content, tour promotion, marketing management, and several other such factors that basically help build their stardom. Of course, these are companies, not charities, so it's obvious for them to expect a return on those investments in the form of major profits from touring, merch, streaming, and sponsorship deals. Yes, I'm referring to the highly infamous, yet increasingly popular 360 deal. It doesn't really hurt the pockets of bigger stars, but you can totally feel it when you're just a standard name who's barely able to crack even 1 million streams per month across all digital streaming platforms. So how does an artist end up getting signed to a label in the first place? If your route happens to be the major label track, the plan is fairly straightforward. The first thing you'll need to do is blow up your social media as big as it can go. We're talking between at least 20 to 100K followers. Many newbie artists end up hiring social media management to get this done so they can stay focused on the music rather than the marketing of their work. As you'd expect, impressing a major label in the first place is super tough. It generally isn't enough to have one strong point alone. You could be the musical version of William Shakespeare, and it still won't do anything to boost your chances unless you have something else to offer. A label knows that if it has to create a star, it will need someone who can be sold to the audience in multiple ways. This is why label execs usually look for acts they think can provide the whole package. There are a lot of factors that label reps consider today as potential for stardom. This includes a whole set of questions. How many followers does the artist have on Instagram and, more importantly, on TikTok? How many views and likes does their content get on a daily basis? Are they easy to connect to? Do they seem real enough online? Are they relatable enough for fans to stick to them in the long run? Is there any actual talent there when it comes to singing, dancing, or humor? For example, Bella Poarch is one of this decade's newest artists whom you could call a star. A few years ago, she was just a regular woman who spent some time in the armed forces, but then blew up on TikTok. A major label took her from that platform and designed an image for her, hired a team to write with her, and now her song Build Ah a Bitch has over 1 billion streams across YouTube and Spotify. In this case, it did not matter whether she could write her own music or even present complex artistic concepts. The important thing was that she could be sold as a brand to her audience, and the label did everything it could to make her famous. If Bella Poarch did not have the support of Warner Records, I think it's safe to say that her TikTok efforts would not have translated to the kind of success she's enjoying today. It's not just about the music either. She's getting brand endorsements and other deals too. All thanks to Warner executives hashing it out with their network to make sure they can milk as much money as they can from their latest talent. Now, if you want to get signed through an indie label, the situation is a bit different and more genuine. In this case, musical acts that have as little as 2 to 8K followers can and do get signed to such labels. The key here is having a knowledge of the kind of subgenre you play and being completely unfazed by mainstream success or trends. Examples of big indie labels today include Jaguar, 4AD, Anti, and No Nesuch. If you make shoegaze, make sure your music pays homage to all the greats without ripping them off. Play DIY underground shows and travel to the towns and cities where that music thrives. Underground blogs and Spotify playlists will help word spread organically anyway. If you put enough time into the craft of the specific type of music you make, an indie label may eventually see that hard work and the earnestness and offer you a release on cassette or vinyl. That may lead to a full-length record and tour with some of their artists. Promotion for indie bands can help you get your foot in the door as well. And yes, if you do want to sell out after gaining some kind of traction, you can always use your time at the indie label as a reference point when you're negotiating with the major label execs. Getting signed to a major label now involves that sort of huge viral upsweep, which isn't impossible if you are good at the platform and can follow the trends, anticipating the next big thing. Of course, there's a lot more that goes on inside these labels apart from the music itself, and it all has to do with earning potential. This is what makes the industry so big and competitive. The key remains to make sure you have your label support, because if you don't, you're no different from a Party Next Door or Majid Jordan, who are simply stuck working as writing slaves for Drake at the OVO sweatshop. Chapter 3. What scams does the music industry run? Now, when it comes to the world of music, let me just start off by saying that the overall revenue generated by this industry has climbed to a whopping $28.6 billion as per IFPI's March 2024 report. This is almost a 10% increase when compared to the previous year, and premium streaming subscriptions have crossed the 500 million mark as well. As a matter of fact, the reports state that if you consider shared plans and family subscriptions, that number goes as high as 667 million users. Good stuff, isn't it? Well, with every success, there are multiple scams behind it. So let's take a look at some of the most prominent ones in the industry. Chapter 4. Payola. First up, you have the popular Twitter term, payola. Now, this one isn't necessarily a scam, but it's just outright illegal. Payola, often known as pay-for-play, is basically a type of quid pro quo. Some outlets, be it radio, TV, or even magazines, reach out to artists offering airtime or promotion in exchange for a certain amount of money. It's essentially a form of undisclosed advertising. In case you don't know, this kind of stuff is illegal, so I would suggest you never get into it if you ever want to become an artist. In fact, in 1970, the Australian music industry was so up in arms about the prevalence of pay-for-play schemes that commercial radio didn't play new records for almost 6 months. This eventually became what we now call the 1970 radio ban. It was essentially to make sure artists were not getting unnecessary exposure just because their labels were bribing DJs and radio jockeys with the big bucks. However, payola didn't end after that. It actually became a bigger deal, at least in America. In 2004, New York Attorney General Eliot Spitzer launched a full-blown investigation into it and found that Sony BMG Music Entertainment had been involved in several instances of multifaceted pay-to-play. They were fined $10 million for this crime. But that wasn't the end of it either. Spitzer kept going, and in 2006, found Universal Music Group guilty of the same thing, fining them $12 million this time. Spitzer said to NBC News at the time, "Consumers have a right not to be misled about the way in which the music they hear on the radio is selected. Pay-for-play makes a mockery of claims that only the best or most popular music is broadcast. So yes, the next time you hear a random artist on the radio you've never heard of before, you can safely assume that payola is lurking around somewhere. If you notice the artists I named earlier in the payola scam, 2 of them, Lipa and Ed Sheeran, both belong to Warner Music. Suppose it's fair to say the label wants 2 of its biggest artists to gain as much airplay as possible, even when their songs aren't making any noise. But it's not just that payola is illegal and a disappointing stain on the reputation of the industry. It's also, very often, an easy way to get scammed if you're an artist. Scammers tend to pose as radio DJs or editors of big music magazines. They'll reach out to you, say they love your stuff and they want to promote your work, and get you all invested. But there's a catch: you have to be willing to pay for it up front. A lot of people are willing to do this without even consulting a lawyer. After all, a couple of $100 for a chance at the big leagues, I'd take that too if I were given the chance. But little do they know, that play isn't coming. That magazine feature isn't coming. They simply got scammed. It's more common than you think. Countless Reddit and Quora threads can be found in just a quick Google search with titles like, "Does anyone know if this is a scam? Is this a scam?" or "Legit and music press scam." You can find countless stories of people being approached by so-called legitimate DJs and writers, asking for a small fee in exchange for an opportunity of a lifetime that will never come. Chapter 5: Feature Fees and Cosigns. Another pretty common scam comes in the form of feature fees. Normally, the term feature fee refers to the money an artist will pay another artist to have them feature on a track. For example, Taylor Swift was probably paid a lot of big bucks by B.O.B. for her feature on his 2012 song Both of Us. Now, if you're trying to make it big, then you'll mostly do anything to have a big name featuring on your track. Of course, you won't have the money to make it happen, so that's where your label steps in. Most of the times, you'll get clubbed together with a premier artist signed to the same label so that even the company won't have to worry about the costs. You'll see this kind of phenomenon mostly in rap and hip-hop, where artists hop onto some newbies' tracks just to make some easy cash. Drake is a popular topic when it comes to bigger artists doing features to help out smaller ones, but then again, it's also coupled with the culture vulture accusations and the fact that he charges quite a bit for these features. We don't know the exact number on Drake, but we can say that as per 2023, the man who out-rapped him, Kendrick Lamar, charges $400K and above for a feature. Yup, only a label is going to be able to afford that kind of price tag. Of course, cosigns can also work instead of features because they're usually a lot cheaper to execute. The best example of this can be seen in how Olivia Rodrigo quickly rose to stardom largely due to cosigns from multiple artists, including her biggest inspiration, Taylor Swift. So Olivia Rodrigo was already a somewhat known name due to her role in Disney's High School Musical. Plus, her songs catered to the exact same audience that Taylor Swift targets: white teenage girls going through breakups. Songs like Driver's License and Good For You were perfect singles to capture that market, but in order for her to become a huge star, there was one ingredient still needed to cook up the perfect recipe. It came in the form of an official cosign from Taylor Swift when she left a comment under Rodrigo's Instagram post. Now, this really helped blow her up because her entire brand was based off her love and respect for Taylor Swift and her songwriting. Rodrigo's existing fans were already hoping for some sort of acknowledgement from her idol, and when it came, even Taylor Swift's fans started consuming her music. That's the power of Taylor Swift's cult. And in this case, it helped an upcoming artist explode onto the scene. However, this is not a Disney story from the 90s. In the music industry, it does not matter how sincere you are or how much of a fairy tale you're trying to sell your fans, business will always remain business. If you've checked my previous video where I explained the Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef, I spoke about how music distribution companies split up into multiple labels so that they can have artists help each other out through affiliations. Olivia Rodrigo is signed to Interscope Records, which is a subdivision of UMG. Want to know who else is signed to UMG? That's right, Taylor Swift. The execs at her label Republic Records were just a phone call away from Rodrigo's agents at Interscope, and one business meeting later you've got the whole world thinking that these two women are besties. It's a brilliant marketing plan for sure, but the point remains that Olivia Rodrigo would have never become this big had it not been for her label. She would have never gotten Taylor Swift's cosign had it not been for Interscope being a part of UMG. At best, a couple of her songs would have gone viral on TikTok, and that would have been the end of that. Others may argue against this point by stating that the women have beef between them. This stems from the fact that Swift and her co-writers got added to the writing credits of Rodrigo's song Deja Vu after it was revealed that her own song Cruel Summer was used as an inspiration for it. However, I'm simply going to say the exact same thing: business will always remain business. Taylor Swift is not the type to lose out on any kind of revenue, and if she sees any kind of opportunity, she is going to grab it with both hands. I suppose it's safe to assume that she has moved on from the VMA incident with Kanye West and turned into an outright businesswoman. You could even say that it's simply making good on her earlier cosign. After all, the promos didn't end with a simple Instagram comment. Taylor Swift and Olivia Rodrigo also have a post together. At the end of the day, though, both artists seem to have dismissed any rumors of hostility between them. More importantly, Swift is dominating the music charts all over the world, and Olivia Rodrigo has pretty much established herself as the next big pop star. So everyone's happy from the business side of things. Chapter 6: Tour Openers. This one's a pretty important tool for smaller artists because it gives them exposure to real people in a live setting. Touring is supposed to be the biggest revenue generator for artists, and even though the 360 deal allows labels to eat into those earnings, there's still a marked difference. Now, if we consider artists like Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole who are big enough to sell out arenas, we can assume an average attendance between 12 to 15,000 fans at each show. That's a lot of people, and they're the perfect audience for an upcoming artist to create some kind of hype. Sure, not everyone will be there for the opening act, But even if 1,000 people get in around the time you're finishing up your set, you're getting some great promo while also getting paid to do it. Let's take the example of Sabrina Carpenter. She's a fairly successful artist, but still nowhere near the big leagues. However, things started to change for her when she got to open for Taylor Swift during her record-breaking Eras tour. These are not arenas we're talking about, these are stadiums packed with a minimum of 50 to 60,000 fans. Plus, these are Taylor Swift fans who are so obsessed with her that they do end up showing early for buying merch and attending opening gigs. Sabrina Carpenter got a lot of favorable exposure during these shows, and this has led to her songs Espresso and Please 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 dominating the Spotify charts. As a matter of fact, she's doing more daily streams on the platform than Drake, which is a very big deal for a low to mid-level artist like her. How did it all happen though? Well, she's signed to UMG via Island Records, and Taylor Swift is signed to the same group via Republic Records. See what happens when a label makes things happen for you. Chapter 7: Streaming Farms. Another extremely prevalent scam is that of streaming farms. Actually, this one's so detailed that it's pretty much going to take up the rest of this video, so buckle in. In recent years, the rise of streaming farms has become a significant issue in the world of online streaming. This controversial business model has taken advantage of the constant hunt for more listeners, streams, and popularity among artists. With a simple purchase of fake streams from streaming farms, it's way easier now for artists to rank higher on the charts and gain more fans. Without even mentioning it, we can only imagine the significant increase in revenue they receive from the royalties generated by all these streams. And this is actually the most common reason why most labels decide to invest in fake streams in order to create a fake persona for their artists. Now, streaming services have undoubtedly played a crucial role in the survival of the music industry. In the past decade, the global revenue generated by sales of physical music products has decreased by a significant 35%. However, the rise in popularity of online streaming has been staggering. And according to some music industry stats, now 65% of its revenue is coming from streaming platforms. Usually, most of the streaming platforms such as Spotify and YouTube have a free version, and there are paid versions as well. The paid versions are ads-free, and the platform earns money from monthly subscriptions. However, the vast majority of people use the free version. For it to remain free, they need to show advertisements. So, in the same manner as social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram, streaming platforms also charge a certain amount of money for the number of ads shown. On the other side are the artists and other rights holders who publish their work on Spotify or any other popular streaming platform. They earn from them through streaming royalties, which are payments made to them based on the number of times their music is streamed on the platform. Naturally, the more streams an artist's music receives, the more money they earn in royalties. And this is where the demand for streaming farms comes into play. Many artists turn to these shady boosters to artificially increase their streaming numbers and revenue. Now, what exactly is a streaming farm, and how does it work? Simply put, streaming farms are a network of devices, such as smartphones or computers. Their main goal is to play a specific song or piece of music to create the appearance of a large number of online listeners. These devices imitate online streams almost as if a human is actively listening to the target songs, and this artificially increases streaming numbers. This way, big artists and labels can fake their numbers on online streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, SoundCloud, or Deezer and appear more popular than they really are. By doing so, these artists can stay on top of the charts and create music hits, which in return, of course, generates higher profits. Of course, this raises the question, are these artists and labels going against the principles of fair competition? The practice of using stream farming gives artists an unfair advantage over smaller ones who may not have the ability or do not want to compete in this way. As a result, the music of smaller artists may remain undiscovered. Let's imagine that an artist has invested a huge amount of time to produce a quality piece of music in some genre. Another artist has a song that should be consumed by the same audience, but this artist uses a streaming farm to increase its popularity. The higher number of streams then influences the streaming algorithms to recommend the song to real listeners, leaving the song by the other artist at the bottom. What this also leads to is that listeners may be presented with music that is less relevant to their preferences. This way, streaming farms are not just disrupting fair competition, but also are affecting the overall quality of the listening experience for users. In most cases, it's the label that pays for these farms because independent artists usually do not have the kind of money to sustain such practices. At best, they can use streaming farms to get their songs a couple of million views in order to catch the eye of some label exec. After that, it's up to the label to pay off these farms in order to make sure their artist is at least maintaining some kind of super persona. Think about it, you have so many artists right now that have songs exceeding billions of streams, but you have no idea who they are. You've never heard them on the radio, you don't hear their music being played in clubs, they haven't gone viral on TikTok. And you don't even see any discussions about these songs on social media, apart from maybe just a handful of die-hard fans. Then how on earth does this song have over 1 billion streams on Spotify? Now you have your answer at streaming farms. A perfect example of this is French Montana's song Writing on the Wall. Now, before I break it down, I must admit that I don't like French Montana as an artist at all, but I do enjoy his one true hit, Unforgettable. So this is not a biased assessment. So when Writing on the Wall dropped the first time, Montana and his label were hoping for this song to blow up and become the next Unforgettable. As it turns out, the song was immediately forgotten despite big features from Post Malone and Cardi B. Nobody was streaming it, and the lack of a hit single eventually led to Montana's album flopping on the charts. However, in a desperate bid to gain some relevance, Writing on the Wall immediately rose up the charts and started doing good numbers on Spotify. Now, people were defending this by saying the song was going viral on TikTok, but there was something that just didn't add up. The streams were only coming from Spotify and nowhere else. Writing on the Wall didn't have any placement on any of Apple Music's charts, which is surprising considering the fact that the US is the majority market for the streaming platform. Plus, hip-hop at the time was the most popular genre on Apple Music, with rap songs always finding themselves at higher positions on their charts despite being lower on Spotify's charts. The opposite thing was happening here. And then there's the fact that the song was barely gaining any streams on YouTube, which is the only platform apart from Spotify where you can see a stream count. It just wasn't making sense, and the only logical conclusion was that Montana's label paid a Spotify streaming farm to boost his numbers in order to add credibility. The thing is that if you want to check for stats, then usually people just look at Spotify because it's the most popular platform that gives a stream count. Apple Music doesn't reveal numbers, and YouTube has now become a platform that's dominated by Asian and Latin markets, so you don't see a lot of streams for American songs unless they're a global sensation. News about streaming success consequently leads to positive PR, but Montana got called out, and this did his image a lot more damage than good. Of course, Spotify is not the only platform that does this kind of thing. YouTube is somewhat infamous due to its autoplay feature. Basically, when you're done listening to a song or even watching a video on YouTube, the autoplay feature will instantly start another video or song based on your watch history and preferences. It's supposed to be driven by a valid algorithm, but in some cases, it's the same song that gets played no matter what video you're watching. Normally, you'll skip the song if it's something you don't like, but most of the times, you'd have already listened to 30 seconds of it, which is enough to count as a view. This is another unethical way to increase the streams of a song that isn't doing as well as you wanted it to. Let's take the example of the Future and Drake track, Life is Good. Now, this was a hit song for sure, but mainly in America. It had a decent performance globally, but most definitely not anywhere close to having over 2.1 billion streams on YouTube. Post-2018, it's usually your Spotify numbers that exceed your YouTube numbers, but that wasn't the case with Life is Good, which has lesser streams on the dominant platform. Let's take another song from the same era as a comparison in order to prove it's a genuine hit. The Weeknd's Save Your Tears was a global hit that topped the FBi charts and became a viral sensation being played all over the radio, in clubs, and on social platforms like TikTok and Instagram. The solo version has over 1.5 billion views on YouTube, and the remix with Ariana Grande has over 500 million views across multiple versions. Compare these numbers to Spotify, where the song will soon cross 2 billion streams simply with its solo version, while the remix is well over 1.5 billion streams. Another important thing to consider is that streaming farms and autoplay only boost streams for a fixed period of time. This was pointed out by multiple people as they noticed that Life is Good was getting a ridiculous amount of views on YouTube every day, even though the song left the Spotify charts a while ago. What's important to note is that the streaming numbers dropped significantly only after the song was certified diamond in the US. Now, the video doesn't even get 150K views per day, whereas on Spotify, it's doing a little under 300K streams per day. Decent numbers, no doubt, but still suspicious considering the massive YouTube autoplay. Now, let's compare this to Save Your Tears, which is still doing over 1 million streams daily on Spotify for its solo version and almost 900K streams a day for its remix. If this song was the product of streaming farms, then it would not have been getting such consistent numbers throughout its runtime. Similarly, the music video is also doing over 1 million daily views, probably because people are still amazed by the fake surgery The Weeknd did to make the video go viral. Similarly, the remix videos are also cumulatively bringing in around 250 to 300K views per day, which makes sense considering it's not as big as the solo version. There's also the fact that Save Your Tears was dominating platforms like Apple Music, Deezer, and Pandora as well, so you know the song is a genuine hit. Of course, there might have been some excessive promotions from the labels to keep the song relevant, but that can only work for over 4 years if there is organic merit to it. So, how do you know if a song is actually a hit? because popular songs always find their way on TikTok one way or another. The thing is, some songs last while other songs have limited tenures in the music space. The song Stay by Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber was touted to exceed Blinding Lights as the most streamed song on Spotify, because the streaming peaks it was enjoying at the time were phenomenal to a whole other level. But after a year or so, the audience grew tired of it, and now it's nowhere close to catching up either on Spotify or on YouTube. What's important to note is that a real hit will be heard everywhere. Blinding Lights is the biggest song to have come out in the 2020s era, and the global domination it enjoys can be seen when dozens of stadiums, each packed with over 80,000 fans, are singing along to it all over the globe. Similarly, Stay is also a song that's known all over the world and even has a popular remix with a Bollywood song from India. You can't say the same about Life is Good. Back to streaming farms now, are they illegal? I'll keep it short here, yes. Similar to bot farms and click farms, they can harm healthy analytics on a huge scale and are affecting both advertising numbers and revenue streams for artists. With the use of bot listeners on streaming platforms, advertisers are still paying for ads played to users who are not actually people. This leads to inflated numbers, ineffective use of advertising budgets, and a lack of accurate data. Another major problem is that music labels and artists can make money from fake listeners of their music. While platforms like Spotify pay between $0.003 to $0.005 per stream, thousands of bot listeners can be purchased for less than $1. Plus, these listeners can be used for multiple streams across multiple platforms. Let me explain. Suppose I purchase 1,000 bot listeners for $1. Let's say I want this bot to stream song X on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music. Let's assume Spotify pays me $0.003 per stream, YouTube pays the same rate, and Apple Music pays 1 cent per stream, since they are known to pay their artists well. Even if a single bot plays one stream across all 3 platforms, I'm earning $0.016 per bot, which translates to $16 per 1,000 bots. That's a profit of $15 for each dollar I spend. Even if my bot could only stream 1 time from Spotify, I'm still making $3 for each dollar I spend, which is a profit of $2. Multiply this by hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you'll realize exactly how profitable it is to bump up an artist's streaming numbers. This is why labels don't mind creating this fake impression of a flop artist doing well, because not only does it bring in streaming revenue, it also makes the artist more marketable for advertisements. It's a lot more feasible for a brand to pay an artist bringing in millions of streams daily to promote their products and services as opposed to an artist that gets a few 100,000 in the same time period. Essentially, a lot of money is being wasted on fake stars, and by the time the brand realizes that their marketing effort was a waste, the label has already secured another deal for the same artist with another naive brand. The use of streaming farms has become a major point of controversy within the music industry, raising ethical, financial, and legal concerns that demand closer examination. When undetected, these fake music streams can create a distorted picture of an artist's popularity and artificially inflate their streaming numbers. This affects the artists themselves and harms the credibility of the streaming platforms. They can't ignore the fact that part of the streams come from the streaming bots they have paid for. Another part is that their music is recommended to real listeners due to the high number of streams. And it doesn't have to mean that these real listeners actually like the song but have been just trapped within the auto-suggestion loop. Nevertheless, some artists and labels don't even care about organic fans. All they really need is the revenue they receive from the royalties. This way, they are taking the money away from other artists whose music might be much better, but is suppressed thanks to the fake numbers of their competition. In this era where online streaming dominates the music industry, it's crucial for artists, labels, and streaming platforms to work together to combat artificial streams and promote authenticity, fairness, and transparency. After all, digital streaming is projected to hit a revenue of almost $32 billion by the year 2027. Chapter 8: Conclusion. Using music streaming farms violates Spotify's terms of service and can result in penalties such as account suspension, legal action, and damage to an artist's reputation. Ultimately, artists who use streaming farms steal money from the platform and other artists who will be paid less. While Spotify and a few other streaming platforms have started including terms and conditions to take action against bot streams, it's important for the industry to remain vigilant and prevent these fraudulent activities from occurring in the first place. As far as creating fake stars goes, it's sad, but it looks like it's only going to continue. Labels want money, and they don't make stars in the music industry as they used to a decade ago. While there are ways to identify genuine success, the world will continue being bombarded with fake streams, fake PR, and God knows what else. All I can say is, if you like the music, just enjoy it. There's not much else that you can do. If you like today's topic, then please like, share, and subscribe so that I can continue to make more videos. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to cover something you find interesting. Okay then, I'll see you in the next one.